Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we have Justin Stouch. Did I pronounce that right, Justin?
That's correct, Stouch.
Stouch. There you go. He's a nailed member. He's been in lighting since he was a kid, just like me, and we're going to talk about that real quick. But before we do, we got to go to the gangsters. That's right, Greg Eric. We got to go to Satco. Go to satco.com. They do the light thing. They do the right thing, brother.
Here's a perfect example of doing the right thing. Maybe, Scott, you're showing the website right now, but they came out with this little aware packet that I was like, whatever, it's a catalog. But you know what it has is everything you need. Decorative fixtures, new stuff that is new, that people are into. I had somebody that's building a new apartment building ask me for a certain style of fixture. I don't get into new construction much at all. But when I do, I go to Satco every time because they have everything and they're up to date with the trends and the pricing is there and the colors and the availability. What more can you ask for? Satco's got it.
I really like that hat you got, man. I'm just going to quickly throw mine on real quick here.
Get it
Before
done.
we keep going there, brother, because this show is brought to you also by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, man. You got to go to NALD.org. We've been telling you about this for 4 years now. We've had enough of your bullshit. You got to join, or we're not going to let you join anymore. Ain't that right, Greg Eric?
That's right. Taking a stand.
What's happening, Justin?
Not so much. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, man.
So, Justin, I looked at your website a little before we talked here. And, you know, one thing that stuck out to me that I really liked was this thing that said 4 steps to a lighting project. These are the 4 steps you guys do. You assess, you educate, you evaluate, and you save. That second one really stuck out to me, that educate part. Are you spending a lot of time when you go into your customers and educating them on their options, or are you just telling them, here's your option?
No, we kind of do the opposite of just telling them, here's your option. We found over doing this for a number of years that, lighting for many, many years was always a commodity. This lamp is the same as that lamp. You kind of just default to a brand or a relationship. But, when LEDs started kind of becoming mainstream, it really disrupted that process, at least that conventional approach. So, we put a lot of time and effort into sort of decommoditizing the conversation, I guess is the best way to put it. So what we try to do is in that educational process is it's not just say here's what's on the shelf, here's what's available. It's kind of trying to get understanding from them in terms of what are they trying to achieve. If we're talking, this is mostly for retrofit, projects, not so much on the new construction side. But if you think of every lighting project we are retrofitting, think of it like a pie chart with 3 slices. It's going to affect you in energy savings, maintenance savings, and performance, right? So imagine everything kind of starts as 3 equal slices. So in that education process, what we try to find from the customer is which of those slices is the most important. And that can kind of vary, by customer. It can vary by site, even if the customer has multiple sites. So if they say, hey, the site's underlit, we're not so worried about maintenance costs. We have guys on staff. We're not going to fire them if we change out the lighting. Energy would be great, but we're only running 8 hours a day. We got, energy costs aren't that high. So its performance is the primary. So we look at that. Okay, that slice takes up the largest. So there we're going to look at, photometrics, increasing foot candles, finding products that most cost effectively are going to focus on that performance aspect. You take the same mentality if it's energy savings, if it's a manufacturing facility running 24 hours a day, getting crushed on energy cost, or if it's street lighting and the maintenance costs are killing them, that they got to keep the area lit. Each project's kind of a little different in terms of how they value those slices. So in that education process, we try to convey that. Say, here manufacturer A is going to achieve your performance, at this price point. Manufacturer B is going to help your energy savings at this price point. So there's a lot of education that needs to be commoditization on the conversation. Why is one manufacturer different than the other? Diving into what, difference in core junction temperature is, as it doesn't get you too far with a lot of customers, but, it starts there, it kind of tells them why one option is different than the other, and ultimately how those options and those differences are going to affect them on the end result. So it's a long-winded answer to your very short question.
That's great, though. That's what I expected. It's going to take a little time to unpack because it is a different mindset, but in my opinion, the right mindset is that you need to do that kind of thing. I just find a lot of times that people don't really care. We can try a lot, and how do you get them to care? What are you guys doing?
Well, they don't care until the lights stop working, right? And
Yeah,
that kind of goes
right.
back to that. The product's only as good as, honestly, the manufacturer behind it. A lot of
Hmm.
stuff looks great on paper. A lot of you guys had a lot of people on the podcast talking about, manufacturers, like what separates them, whether it's the LED lifetime debate, TM21, LM70, all of that. And that's all great. And it can look great on paper. Oh, great. 200,000 hours rated life. But tell me about the manufacturer. Who are they? Are they just, a storefront in City of Industry, California, that's bringing in containers full of stuff? Or do they actually have some skin in the game? Are they warranting color shift? Right? Little things like that. So if you ask a manufacturer, if we have our customers ask our competitors, are you warranting color shift? And they go, what? It's sort of a red flag. So we try to cut through that by making sure that we understand the manufacturers, working even with manufacturers reps, who are they? Who's behind it? How long have they been around? You can't just discount somebody if they haven't been around too long. It's sort of a new industry to a certain degree with some manufacturers, but do they have some skin in the game? Does the manufacturer have some skin in the game, or are they just buying containers and slapping a label on? So I guess that sort of answered the question, but
Where were you
that's,
23 years ago?
no, man, I've got plenty of horror stories. That's for sure.
Well, how old are you?
I'm 34, so 23 years ago I was not quite in the industry, but I was definitely putting files away in the sign
Yeah,
and lighting world.
200,000 hours is 23 years operated at 24/7. Like,
Yeah.
that's no
So
chance. Anybody that tells anybody that is completely full of crap. I mean,
especially when they're right in the specs, right in the. It's,
I mean,
it's
you know
tough.
what?
It's
I
tough to
got
argue
paper. I
against
got paper here too. I can write stuff on
that.
paper.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got? You
Yeah.
got your paper, or you got a factory full of burned out lights? Which one is
Yeah.
it? I got the
Well,
paper.
I've I like to say I've lost, unfortunately, a lot of jobs by recommending the right product, and you're always going to have those battles of attrition to a certain degree, and there's only going to be so much you can
Why are you
try to educate a
fighting? Why are
customer on.
you dying on that hill? Why not just give them what they want?
Because I don't want to be in the warranty servicing business, right?
No, you do. Yeah, that's paper again. You just write it on the paper.
Now it's great. Yeah, sure. A couple years down the road, oh hey, 70% failure rate because it's not
Yeah.
IP66, it's IP63 or IP64. So we've seen it happen. So I've been fully in the LED world since 2008, and in the LED world, that, I guess, it sort of feels like a lifetime. So we've seen a lot of the ups and downs. We've seen the manufacturers disappear on people. We've had it happen to us. We're not perfect. We've not batting 1,000 on every manufacturer that we've evaluated, but it's a tremendous headache, and it certainly prevents you from winning business with that customer in the future.
I think I'm going to interrupt here. I think the idea that distributors that take a position, I think that's the wrong. I think customers get what they deserve. That's how we take it. You want to go cheap? Here you go, bub. There you go. That's El Cheapo. And we've done lots of jobs like that, man. I'm telling you about Colligan's not an LC. He doesn't know what's up. Colligan
Yeah,
sells a lot of light fixtures, brother.
yeah.
And I believe in giving people what they want, and people get what they deserve. Greg Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I think to some degree, but it's kind of the balancing act of like, okay, we can do that, but understand what you're doing. Even though I want them to understand, because I don't want them to come back to me and say, you sold me this and you did that.
I
I
love it
want
when
to
they
tell
come
them,
back. That's my favorite part.
but
Like
But
that's
do they
why I
come
don't
you
back?
to
understand why you
understand.
guys are afraid of that. I love it
You've
when
got
they
to
come
get,
back. Remember
yeah,
when
but
I
you get them
told
to
you?
understand.
Remember when I told you that?
People don't like to admit they're wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's that's the theme of the world right now, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, that's
But I
true.
mean, someone comes back and they say, "Hey, those whatever we bought from you is not working." I say, "Look, man, you got your money back 3 times. You got
It's fair
50%
enough.
from the utility. What do you want from me, bud?"
What do you do when it's under warranty?
I say the
And
warranty is held by that company over there.
all right.
Very simple.
And they
I
don't hold
mean,
your feet
this
to the fire
idea
on
that
that.
you're not an extension of manufacturer warranty X, that's not you. You got to position yourself on the same side of the table as them and say, they screwed us, man. See what I'm talking about? These guys. Now, I can fix it for you. And we'll probably get a rebate to do it because now the tubes or whatever it is or this sort of thing, right? But, yeah, that's life now, man. I mean, any idiot that believes that something's ever going to burn out, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, bub. I hate to say it, but I mean, even these manufacturers. I mean, Greg, how many of the good ones, like even the ones back in 2016, though, these are the good ones. How many of those guys are not even in the business anymore?
Or have changed. Yeah, a lot of them.
Come on,
It's
man.
crazy.
Let's call a spade here, Justin. You're playing the same game we all playing. We don't know how these fixtures are made. They're all made in China, most of them, and that's okay. I mean, the fact is that some companies are going to be there, like Satco, the sponsor of this show. That's a company that stands behind their products, and another company that sent me like 200 LED light fixtures and paid to have them reinstalled. That's a company, man. But I don't know how long they can run that thing going for. How many of those fixtures? Let's say they sold 10,000 of those fixtures or whatever it is. I mean, that can't go on forever. Fact is that the customer's got to pay for all these mistakes, whether that's a municipality, whether that's a factory or a warehouse, whether it's the highest company that charged the most or the cheapest Chinese import. Nobody knows which one's going to last longer. Some of them are gone, some of them aren't. Some of them color shifted, some of them didn't. Some of them dimmed, some of them didn't. Nobody even knows the reason why, and half the companies aren't even in the business anymore, Justin.
So let me ask you this. So when you sell the cheaper stuff, and you do disclaim to, if you don't disclaim to them and say, hey, listen, we're not going to be responsible for the warranty of this. That's
No,
going
I
to be
just
something
say
you're going to handle
this is
direct.
the warranty.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, the piece of paper. The piece of paper.
Yeah, it's a piece of paper. Here you go. This
So
one
do
is
they come back
$100, and this one is $185. I'll arrange to have either one of them put up in your facility. That doesn't bother me.
But do they come back when they fail and you can't service
The
it?
good thing about LEDs is that they actually last long enough that the anger period is usually dissipated, right? So a lot of times, people don't remember who upgraded their lighting. A lot of times, I'm not saying I like that. I call them back and I do my thing. I'm just being straight with you here, man. This idea that I don't believe that a nailed distributor should die on the hill of quality. That's what I'm saying. Because they don't control the quality. And what we've learned is that all those companies talking about quality are gone. And so where are we now? All those distributors, I'm sold you quality, yeah, except for that company doesn't sell lighting anymore, and they exited stage left. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not ending up with egg on my face. I'm giving the straight goods to the customer. This is what it is. This one's 100. That's 185. What do you want to do?
Fair enough. That's a fair enough statement. I guess I've found that those repeat sales, that customer, they dwindle after you have that warranty issue and the product doesn't get
I
there.
think it's higher. I think the more likely the warranty problem, the more likely I'm going to get more revenue down the road. I think it's the other way around. If you're just straight with people and, hey, my fixtures are burned out. Yeah, you got your money back 2 or 3 times and light fixtures out. You got a big fat rebate to do it. A lot of problems with this fixture, whatever. Manufacturer's not honoring the warranty. What do you want to do?
I guess buy another one, right?
Maybe this time you should listen to me. Huh? Maybe this time you'll do what I tell you to do.
Well, I think that's a key point is that you are telling them that you're not just saying here's 100, here's 185, here's 100, and here's 185 because of this.
Yeah, but I don't know.
That's
Back in
what I think
2016, bro, I didn't know if the 185 one was going to last longer either, to be honest with you.
Right.
They just came
Yeah,
out
yeah.
with their latest and greatest too. 10-year
Sure.
warranty. My ass. I'm hot
Yeah.
today, buddy. But, I mean,
see that.
it's like, come on, man. Come on, man.
Did you have a manufacturer disappear on you lately, or something a little sore on that?
No,
on that
I'm not
subject?
sore at
You
all.
sure?
I'm not sore at all. I'm not sore at all. I'm completely realistic with this, man. I have 100% realism, Justin. on
So
this
if you're in a
issue.
competitive situation and you take that realism, and then there's somebody selling a similar product going, no, they'll be here. They've been around. This is the latest and greatest. So how do you compete in that scenario? If you're going to be
Well,
honest,
first of
about
all,
a
I
sim
asked the
product.
questions, but
Yeah.
but that's right. No, I'm joking with you. Of
Fair
course,
enough.
conversation. This is
All right.
this is a nail talk conversation. Clearly, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
like what happens at a convention. If you've ever been to a nail convention, you're having a nail conversation right now. You know what?
All right.
So I always ask them, like, your family's obviously been in the lighting business. I tell them my family's been in this business for almost 400,000 hours. It's a long time, man. That's since 1977. And how long has the other guy been? You want to go with that guy? It doesn't bother me, man. I'm a best price guy. I always like to put the best price on the table and then add a premium. So this is the best price, because I don't like to drive around and lose deals. I
Fair
like to
enough.
be,
I like that approach. The how many hours, because it equates easily.
yeah.
What's the L70 on your experience?
Yeah, what's your light dimming rate, buddy? Your lumen maintenance. My
Yeah,
lumen maintenance is 100%, brother. In fact, I'm increasing my lumen maintenance, buddy.
I like it.
So, I mean, that's what I say. And we lose deals, but I don't want to lose deals on price. I don't want to lose deals on look at Toronto has more Chinese immigrants than any other city in the world. So I took Greg on a tour of Toronto around my shop. Within the last 6 or 7 years, there's like 35 LED shops that have sprung up within a walking distance of my shop. I'm competing
Uh-huh.
against these guys. They're good people. I don't have a problem with them, but they go out of business like crazy. I'll tell you that.
I've seen
So
that.
yeah,
So how long has Stouch Lighting been in business?
So Stouch Lighting's been around since 2008. Right,
Okay.
it's when we were born, so to speak.
And what were you
Yeah,
doing? Your family was in it. It sounded like.
yeah. So my father had a sign, light, and electrical project management company that he started back in 1993, and they kind of existed in the same space, obviously prior to the LED, let's call it revolution, so to speak. And that's kind of where I came up. As soon as I was old enough to do anything of any use for a small business, I was in there. Age 12, 13, licking stamps, put on mailers, just getting the idea, working with subcontractors, working with national customers. Not so much on the new construction, but primarily in the retail world and in the project-based world. So, back in 2008, he was working with a manufacturer on some unrelated project, and they had asked, "Hey, do you want to open up a distributorship outside of the Philadelphia area where we're located?" And they said, "Sure, of course. 2008, that's LEDs are the future, all right." But they couldn't do it under the previous company's brand name. So Stouch Lighting was created as a new entity. At the time, I was still in college, so I went to work, while still in college for Stouch Lighting, trying to, in between classes, sell a wall pack here, parking lot there, just kind of grinding away and learning a lot. When I graduated in 2010 and came on full time, we only had this one brand, this one manufacturer that we were working with, who's still not a very big player in this space. And what we quickly found out was that, they had maybe a parking lot and a high bay and a wall pack. We'd get talking to customers like, all right, well, we have all this other stuff at our facility. We don't just want to kind of piecemeal it. If we're going to do it, put the money into it, let's do everything. So we started sort of adapting the business model to that. We started bringing on different manufacturers, taking kind of a solution-oriented approach in terms of the manufacturers that we did evaluate. And again, 2008, 2009, sort of the Wild West in terms of LED manufacturers. There wasn't as many as there were now, but there was even less continuity. I think that was before DLC was even around. I think all you had was like Lighting Facts. So there was no really way to compare one to another. So the claims were more outrageous in that they had no baseline. There wasn't as much of an import business. So surprisingly, there was a lot of manufacturers doing this, a lot of U.S. manufacturers, box in, box out
yeah.
kind of
There
thing.
was there was
But
Canadian manufacturers too,
yes,
actually.
there
Yeah, you're
was.
right.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
we've a
Remember
couple.
CRS Electronics?
I do. I remember CRS.
They
There's a
won
couple
the they
still
won
around.
an
We did
award in 2012 at Light Fair. Remember that? Yeah,
LED roadway lighting. I think that's
yeah,
up by you.
sure.
So we learned a lot about those guys. Not those guys in particular, but all those out there. So that's where the business model started to come into place. It wasn't like we were, some kind of prophet and thought, hey, this is the way we're gonna do it. This is the way we're gonna enter. It's not the way we entered. It's the way we sort of adapted to what we were seeing. We weren't. We would bring on some inventory, but 6 months later it'd be out of date. I don't need 10,000 lamps of 4,000 Kelvin if the customer wants 3,000 Kelvin. It doesn't do me any good. And another 6 months later they're out of date, right? So efficacies have gone up. Pin patterns or base patterns are different. Mounting are different. So we just completely lost the whole, stocking inventory approach, and really, work with manufacturers that some do do a good job of keeping domestic inventory. Some don't, but doesn't mean they're bad or good. It's just we have to adapt the project. If a project requires a quick turnaround time, we have to narrow our field with manufacturers that have the domestic inventory. So it's kind of the way we evolved. Since 2010, we've continued to adapt to things that we've seen. We've learned a lot of lessons along the ways. Working with manufacturers that have either disappeared or, like I said their products were IP66. You put them out, massive failures. Water's getting into them. Water's just always an issue. The gasketing back in the day seemed to always be a problem. Power supplies, where are they getting those? How are they replacing them? And then how they handle warranties. Going back to that warranty discussion, right? If I hear, yeah, take it down and send it back, and if there's something wrong, we'll send it back to you. If that conversation happens with the manufacturer, they're gone. We're not dealing with that.
So you're that's interesting. So you're on the green. So like most nail distributors had no interest in LEDs in 2008, 2009, 2011. Greg, what did you say?
Yeah, I think it was about 13 that you saw the first power lamp
13,
that I saw. I was like,
14.
okay,
I was
yeah, I
still
can do it.
selling high
Yeah.
bay fluorescent in 2015. Still selling
Yep.
T8 high bays and that. So you're in early. So you must have had a lot of catastrophic things happen in the early days.
We've had one or two
One or two.
catastrophic things. Yeah, one or two. Man, back in 2012, we closed a street lighting project. In 2012, the world had not taken over the street lighting. It wasn't, the race to the bottom that it was today. It was like 1,400 street lights, which was pretty big for 2012. So as a manufacturer, a U.S. manufacturer, all the product specs looked great. The product looked great. The measurements were great. They performed great once we got them in the air. So we ship half the project. A couple weeks go by. We're waiting on the second order. Nothing. We're all going in the dark. Don't hear back. Turns out they lost their funding. Couldn't complete the order. Right. So we had basically half of a completed job that we were contractually obligated to deliver. And that's the great part. That's not even the best part. A couple of months later, start like, hey, these things are failing like crazy. Why are they failing? Like there's water in them everywhere. Every single light has got water, like even in the individual diode covers. Right. This was back when each diode had its own optic, which is great from an optic perspective. But so it turns out that the fixtures were not IP65 or IP66. I don't recall. They were like IP63. They're basically damp location canopy fixtures that they adapted for streetlights. So as soon as they got in the air, just water. This was in the Northeast, right? So it rains, it snows, it gets cold, it gets hot. So just the fixtures that did ship, that were installed, union labor, failed catastrophically. So that's my biggest one. That's my worst experience, and it happened early. So after that, we've had a couple manufacturers disappear on us, but nothing like catastrophic like that. We were lucky to get through it. Luckily, we had a pretty good relationship with the customer. But that kind of stuff really shaped the way we go about looking at products.
Definitely. And was your dad the owner then to start, or were you?
I took over ownership right before that. Right. So he still has his company. He's still working it. So he's like, I can't do this. I'm not even going to do this. So I was, a little green, to say the least, kind of just thrown into it and said, hey, I need sales, figure it out. So it was definitely a learning experience, but it was a tremendous learning experience. I didn't get a lot of tutelage. My experience was started early and I learned a lot along the way. But, I definitely was shaped by a lot of those early experiences, having been purely LED since 08. It's stuff. I think I sold like maybe a dozen T5 high bays, a couple fluorescent lamps. That's like my total. I know a lot about fluorescent, but I did not. That was never our primary objective. It was always
about taking
LED
out
from the get-go.
fluorescence.
I do. I know a lot. Yeah. Yes, I certainly do.
Is that one manufacturer you started with? You don't say any names. Are they still around?
No, they are certainly not. Oh, well, the manufacturer that I started with.
Yes.
I think so. They are.
Okay.
They are, but even at they were the highest. We didn't know it, but they were like the highest price point, longest lead time thing in the world, even in 08. We were competing against Rudd at the time. Beta was Rudd, then Beta, then Cree, and they were killing it back then. So it was definitely a learning experience along the way.
What do you think was the highest sales year you had going only LED? So my company's always been everything. Mike's always been everything. I know from an LED standpoint, just to share, I think ours highest was 18 and 19, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's probably us as well.
Purely LED. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, probably us as well. Obviously, we started seeing. Obviously 2020 was an interesting year. But we started seeing at the end of 2019, supply chains start getting hit a little bit, for products coming over from Asia. So that started to affect even in 2019. But definitely in the lead up, we're on our way back up. But that was, we've been on a pretty continuous upward clip, luckily. But 18, 19 is probably the peak of it at this point.
And do you guys have an electrical contracting division too, or do you sub all that out?
We sub all of that out. We have like 3,000 resource partners, across the country. It depends on the project, obviously, because you have electrical contractors and then you have lighting contractors. And now everybody knows this, but they are very different entities.
Yeah, sure.
Different types of projects. Your lighting contractor is maybe not going to be the best approach to a 1,000,000 square foot distribution facility where you're working around conveyor belts and everything, right? 2-3 shifts at a pop. But at the same time, your electrical contractor who's used to doing new builds, they're not going to necessarily be able to handle or want to do, a 100 fixture shopping center or something like that, where it's just bucket work.
Most skilled electricians hate doing lighting retrofits. It's super boring.
Yes.
Like, they just get bored. Like, there's lighting electricians, and then there's like real, not real, but like electricians.
No, I know
Like,
what you mean. Yeah, the guys
yeah.
running the conduit and stuff.
Yeah, they're
absolutely.
pulling wire. They want to they want to
Mhm.
build a building or something, put a panel in, and run the circuits and think about it. Change the ballast, put the tubes. Take out the ballast, run the wires. Take out the ballast, run the wires. Take out the ballast, run the wire. A lot of guys have that's a tough gig for a highly skilled electrician. He's not going to want to do that, or she's not going to want to do that.
We found a lot of the sign guys went to the lighting world, right? So the electrical contractors have always been the electrical contractors. A lot of the ones that were in the sign business, which was actually LED before the lighting business.
Sure, it was, yeah.
They are the ones that for at least for the outdoor stuff, right? You find some continuity there. It makes it a little easier. But you're right, because the lighting company gets big enough on a big enough project, it sort of can become almost a competitor, right? They're kind of trying to do the same thing. So those large lighting projects, lighting only, they can be tough in terms of trying to find the right resource partner. But they are out there, and we're fortunate to have a pretty good base of that.
I've trained half my competitors, Greg.
Trained them and they've moved on.
Yeah, and they just, electricians started their own company, and it's basically a lighting installation company. And I got respect for that. That's great. Good for them. I have no problem with them in that sense. Tell me a little bit about what you see in the future. Are you excited right now? Are you a little bit down? What city are you in primarily? Are you in a region? Are you regionally based?
So we're based out of Philadelphia, but we do work, all over the country. I guess I'm a habitual optimist. I'm always excited about stuff,
Okay.
but there's different verticals that are exciting in different ways, right? So yeah, we do offer like turnkey, projects and things like that. But primarily our business is just on the supply side. The newer stuff, the human-centric stuff, is very interesting. But when I'm ultimately more concerned about the ability to implement, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Considering the variables in the field, right? So I get to a site and, oh, wait, these wall packs are actually on photocells. We didn't know that. The customer didn't convey that. Back in the day, you have to we need to know the exact voltage. Not just is it 120, 277, or 480. We need to know 120, 240, all that stuff. But now you can get these fixtures that you can send out, and you can select a photocell. You can select a color in the field. The customer doesn't like it. If it's like a franchise, you're doing a national thing for a franchise. One group of buildings may want 4,000 Kelvin, but this municipality may require 3,000 Kelvin and photocells and additional if you're doing like California, whatever other complicated space. So the ability to kind of implement large projects but adapt at individual site levels, I think that part of the technology is cool. I think that's exciting. It makes you kind of.
It's interesting that you think that's human-centric. Like, that's actually.
It's not. No, I don't. Well,
I actually think you're right
a little
about that.
bit.
I actually think you're right, because what you're saying is that humans like choice, right?
Huh?
And
yeah, I would say so.
yeah, and so you don't like that, so we don't have to replace everything. We just have the guy that's just going to go flick a little toggle switch on the inside of the fixture, and now it's the color you want it. There's something human-centric about that, Greg Eric.
That might be the real human-centric, and that's what we've talked about and gone back and forth is, what is it? There's no prescription for it, so it's got to be choice. So give me the choice, and then I can pick.
Yeah, and but without changing the structure of a project, right? Without overly complicating, because it's great. You can give a customer a million options, but ultimately you need to cost effectively implement them, right?
Mm.
So that ability to sort of in the field, right? There's a lot of great, cool architectural stuff out there. We don't really get into that too much, but some really cool architectural stuff that, really dives into the true nature of, what people can conventionally think of as human centric, the circadian aspects, blue light, all that. But ultimately, when it comes to actually getting product in the air, right?
Mm.
What
I like
can
that
we
line.
provide
Getting
that,
product in the
yeah,
air. I like that.
what can we, how do we do it without killing
This
ourselves?
guy
I
sells
don't,
light fixtures every day or light bulbs every day for sure.
yeah. I'm
So
not,
speaking of,
I'm not an
yeah,
architect
yeah.
for sure.
Speaking of product in the air, this is what I kind of wanted to segue to, and I read in your bio here, a UVC distribution and implementation company.
Ooh.
Now, UVC,
Mm.
came out hot. I even sold some without really knowing much about it, but it's completely died for me. I've attempted here and there, but haven't had any sales. I've talked to others in the industry that were big into it, died right now.
Hmm.
It's just died. Nobody's buying it. Where are you at? Are you selling this stuff still?
Yeah, we're still selling it, right? So we
Okay,
came at it a little bit differently. So we were
sure.
getting into it before the pandemic hit. Something to take to our healthcare customers, right? So UVC obviously has been around inactivating pathogens, right, for quite a while. It's not like a new technology. There's different types of ways to implement it, but
Mhm.
obviously it picked up. We got a tremendous amount of interest in it. If you like Google UVC, germicidal radiation, like Stouch Lighting pops up pretty well. We put a lot of effort into that, and we definitely sold a decent amount of it. But it was something we were getting into before, and so I knew the Puro guys. I saw that you had those guys on,
Mhm.
I guess a couple podcasts ago. I knew them before the pandemic hit, and we were starting to look at that product, and we sort of took the same approach that you know you and I, Michael, went back and forth there in the beginning. Give the customers what they ask for. UVC, you can't. There's sort of a danger there. You can't do that. So we definitely again lost a lot of opportunity because what we weren't selling were wands. We
Mm.
Mhm.
stuck to the clinical validation approach, right? And what people you can use UV in two ways: either while a space is occupied or when a space is unoccupied, right? And you tackle pathogens in two different ways. So we spent a lot of time educating ourselves, putting out a lot of content, try to just find a narrow group of products that we were comfortable in. So we found that there was, I'm sure you saw this, there was two groups of potential customers when UVC was blowing up. There was people that wanted to look like they were killing germs, and there's people that wanted to actually kill the germs, right? The
Mhm.
people that wanted to look like they were killing germs were putting blue lights in their ceiling or on their wall, so their customers or their employees would be like, oh, it's working. The reality is there was no quantifiable effect of that actually having any effect on activating viral or bacterial or fungal pathogens. So we stuck to we can prove it. We want to be able to prove it, and here's some actual data to prove it. So we're still in the works with that. It's more on the air quality kind of spectrum than it is just kind of the UV world. But it's still a tough sell. But in the hospital world, you need to prove it, right? You need to be able to say, X log reduction. We're inactivating these
But hang on. So
pathogens at these distances.
you've done so okay, so I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's the Hygiene Theater crowd,
Yeah.
right? Which, hey, um I don't have a problem with Hygiene Theater. I think it's, if you're walking your kids through, I've recently toured a whole bunch of private schools, boarding schools and non-boarding schools and stuff like that. And it would be interesting to say, if one of them had, and we disinfect between each class with, this. Some parents would have totally bought that whole hog, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've sold into hospitals, operating rooms, stuff like that, because that's where the rubber meets the road, brother.
It is, and that's where we want to be. So
Okay.
yes, I don't know if they use it particularly in the operating room. Operating rooms are actually pretty well set up,
Mm-hmm.
typically prior to even introducing a surface disinfection method,
Mm-hmm.
right? So hospitals are mostly interested in surface disinfection, which is that you
That's
can't
right.
be in
Yeah,
the
you read about
space,
that
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
because it's bacteria that's an issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So viruses like SARS-CoV-2, that's going to exist in the air, and that's
Yeah, they're
primarily
aerosols.
transmitted.
Yeah, they're
Yes,
aerosols. Yeah.
so that's very, very difficult to like quantifiably say we're going to clear this room of SARS-CoV-2 in X minutes. Not if somebody's in the space and they're breathing in your face. It's hard. That's why you can if you have the right data, but that's why the masking and things like that are still in place. But for hospitals, healthcare, and actually schools, right? And long term, it's bacterial issues that are a bigger concern. And that is where the rubber meets the road. How do we quantify that? How do we kill it? So, yes, we are selling into that. And, our customers there starts with the infection prevention team and the facilities guys. Infection prevention needs to see X, Y, and Z in terms of data. Facilities got to go, all right, how do I rotate these things through the room? How do I install them? What's the effect on my load? Right? Are we going to put it into our building automated control system? So there's only a few manufacturers out there that can quantifiably say, hey, we're going to kill norovirus. Hey, we are going to kill all that.
Okay, so I just want to break this back a little bit. So for the people that are listening, there's air disinfection and there's surface disinfection. And those are totally different things. Doing those things are totally different. I kind of went in and backed out because I felt like the majority of the gains because everyone's paranoid about COVID-19, and that's an aerosol. And so I felt like it was more of an HVAC play. Greg, like, wouldn't didn't we kind of come to that conclusion that, most of the gains are going to be had in the ducts, the return and the air ducts, where that's coming out. So the SARS is going in or whatever, tuberculosis, whatever you got, goes in. There's an entry point where they're getting hit with the nanometers, and then there's an exit point, and they get hit with the nanometers on the way through. And they know that this much radiation at this level with this passage of air maximum is going to inactivate, as you said so correctly, Justin, is going to inactivate those pathogens. And then when you look at, if you've never done this, you should go to a loading dock somewhere and look at an air filter from a commercial high-rise building. That is hazardous waste. Those things are disgusting. If you think the one in your home is disgusting, you should see one from a commercial high-rise office tower. But anyway, Greg, didn't we kind of didn't Get a Grip on Lighting kind of come to the conclusion that it's more of an HVAC play than a lighting play?
Yeah, and that probably coincides with why I don't sell much of it anymore. What I was selling was the, the stuff that I could understand, which was a UV cart.
Yeah,
Plug
sure.
it in, move it around, get out of the room, do your thing. And so that's what I was selling. And then, but yeah, after a lot of discussions we had, it kind of seemed like that was where it's at. But Justin,
And
what
I
are
would
you seeing?
agree,
I mean,
guys.
you're selling
Yeah.
it.
So for the most part, you're 100% correct. And by the way, Hygiene Theater, that's in my next discussion with somebody about.
Oh,
'Cause I
that's
love
an
that
arrow
term.
in your quiver, brother.
Oh,
And
I
you know
like it.
what?
I like it. We'll
I would
trade 'em.
suggest speak to people about it seriously, like not
It's,
as a
well, yeah.
because no people want. You talk to a principal of a boarding school. I was talking to him. I said, "You need some hygiene theaters." What's that? It's like you put a little thing on the wall and the lights on, and you say, "Yeah, that's disinfecting the air, kills
Right.
COVID."
Yeah. So to kill SARS-CoV-2 prevents COVID.
Yeah, you're right.
Get
Hey,
that.
thank you.
Yes. So you guys make a good point that it is an HVAC play for a lot of conventional spaces, but so we're in the business of trying to make a financial case. A lot of our projects we have to justify an investment. All right, and here's where the surface disinfection justifies it in healthcare, right? In particularly, so you guys familiar with the term healthcare associated infection (HAIs), right?
Yep.
So what that is an infection a patient gets in a hospital.
Sure.
And most often it's bacteria related. Bacteria is typically
staph infections, and stuff
staph,
like that.
MRSA, C. diff, exactly right. So insurance more often than not, will not pay for healthcare associated infections. Basically, the treatment of HAIs. Patient goes in, gets staph, gets MRSA, gets C. diff, right? Hospital's paying for that, right? So what hospitals are looking for is a way to quantifiably reduce the likelihood of those infections. So now we've taken it just from an HVAC play or whatever it is, hygiene theater. Now we can make a case, right? These products in a half hour or in 5 minutes will disinfect this. Well, I don't really like the term. Will inactivate, right? MRSA in this entire room, quantifiably, right? We'll go in there, we'll test. We know what it takes. So UV's ability to inactivate pathogens is related to dosage, distance, and duration, right? So we can quantify all that.
I'm just gonna jump in on here. When you're talking about a hospital, and this is where when people try to take this technology and apply it to other areas where they should realize they're stumbling. and that
Hmm.
is when you're saying disinfect or inactivate, right? What you're talking
Yeah.
about is a clean surface, right? So we're talking about a surface that's been cleaned and now or is not does not have a whole bunch of grime on it. So when they're talking about disinfecting the surface, they're talking about a surface that's not like very dirty with that it's able to penetrate all of the pores of the surface with this light. This disinfection happens. That's very well understood in a hospital
Hmm.
and not so well understood in a classroom, say, where there's a
Yes.
lot more dirt and it's not nearly cleaned as well.
Yeah, it comes down to what's the liability? What's the
There
cost
you go.
of
Yeah,
not putting? It comes down to dollars, right? Like you said, we
sure.
could do the hygiene theater all the time, but when it comes to public institutions, so places that receive public money, they tend to be more susceptible to litigation, right? So, yeah, at what point do schools become financially responsible for outbreaks of infectious diseases?
Never.
Right? Yeah. Well, you don't think so?
I think
There'll
the
be
answer to
some.
that, I think what I think, and not to walk this path,
Sure.
but you know, it's like the mask studies. It's the same thing. Okay, if you wear a mask perfectly and you wear a clean mask and you change it every time, yes, there's going to be an effect of less virus transmission. That's not what happens in the real world, brother. I got
Yeah.
masks on the floor of my car. My kid needs a mask. Here's a like what really happens in the real world is different. But
Yeah.
there needs to be a voluntary assumption of risk with infectious diseases that everybody just chills out and says, "Look, you want to eat in a restaurant, you want to go to a school, you want to go to a movie theater. There's lots of naked apes there. Some of them are coughing, some of them are sick, some of them took Dayquil, okay?
Hmm.
So they're hiding it, right? Some of them are vaccinated and are now not on non-symptomatic super spreaders or whatever the hell the new terms are, right? So you just have to assume that risk and move on with your life. Otherwise, you're never gonna tackle that. So you say, did the school do everything they could to mitigate it? That's your argument, right? You're saying
Yeah. Well,
the
yeah.
school did
That's
everything
interesting.
they could to mitigate it, right? So what do you want that money
Uh,
spent on? Skylights, which increase IQ? Skylights,
well,
which increase
there's your
test
human-centric
scores?
lighting. Yes.
Right?
So
What are we going to do? Sun tunnels or disinfection? Like there's a where do you draw the line with that? So I'm challenging you here, man. I'm not, this
no,
is
it's
not about
good.
a
I
yes
love it.
fest. I mean, I could be on your side totally,
Yeah.
right?
No.
But so where's the business case? So if you can increase test scores by 17% using sun tunnels or skylights versus this disinfection, because there isn't a limited amount of money, how do we make that case as an industry? Because it's the same thing in a way.
Yeah. And look, SARS-CoV-2 is a poor example if we're using it because these aerosol-based pathogens are not going to be disinfected or like implementing surface-based disinfection
Mm-hmm.
is not going to stop the spread of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So looking beyond the pandemic world that we're currently in and thinking more of the things that are transmissible that are hardy. If anybody's got kids, they've brought home a norovirus, right? It's a 48-hour bug that just wipes out your entire family, right? It's miserable. Those are the types of things in the future that can be preventable. And that's where we have to try to find that quantifiable aspect. Like, where's the money? What is the cost of shutting down a school or a lab? Again, we said hospitals, that case is more easily made.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, making up words, easierly, whatever that was. But in schools, like, there's now a cost. Now we really see the cost of kids not being able to go to school, and now the parents got to stay home, right? So what the pandemic has done is brought to the forefront the effect of kids not being in school, right, and how it affects people's ability to be productive at home. I have a 7-year and a 4-year-old. If they're home and I'm working, not a good day. I love them to death, but they're banging on the door, bugging me for snacks, whatever it is.
Sure.
So it's hard. That's the world we live in. We have to do our best, right? But if the situation is an unforced error, what is that dollar amount worth? And I don't have it, quantified yet. I don't have an exact dollar amount for your answer. But I'm saying, in the gyms and the cafeteria, because UV lighting can also be used to help, inactivate E. coli, salmonella. Again,
Let
these
me let me
bacterial,
throw
these
let me
fungal
throw a
stuff.
little wrench in the spokes. Okay.
Fire away.
So what if like so this sounds a lot like 1950s antibiotics, right? Like now we're gonna yeah, what do you got? You have a sore throat here, take these antibiotics. You have a sore throat, take these antibiotics. Oh,
Yep.
the cows need to give them antibiotics, right? And what about the unknown unknowns? Like, what if you're going to make super pathogens with these? Like
All
I
right.
just feel
No, I
like
love it. No, love it.
I
Fire it
feel
up.
like I feel like it's yeah, we killed the bacteria today. I mean, bacteria is a lot older than humans, man, and they've been around a long time, and they have a trajectory of like, you want to mess with us? Yeah, okay, that might work for a couple decades, but the reason why there is these staph infections, what do you call them, HCIVs or whatever they're called? The reason
HAIs.
those exist because of human interventions.
Yes, so that's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up because yes, there are bacteria. I'm sorry, there are antibiotic resistant pathogens, and that is one of the issues with those HAIs: C. diff, MRSA, staph. Hard to kill, right? So pathogens and organisms cannot develop a resistance to UVC light, right? Because it disrupts the cellular DNA. So it's completely different in the way it attacks it. So UVC is not something that exists on Earth. So you talk about bacteria being around a lot longer than humans. Well, as long as there's been an atmosphere,
Yeah, the
in which
ozone
case that's
layer takes care of that UVC for us.
yes, exactly. But life could not exist even in bacterial form without an atmosphere.
Hmm.
And while that atmosphere has been there, UVC has been deflected essentially. Right? You're talking to a redhead, so I feel like everywhere I go, I'm getting hit with some kind of something burning me. Right? I'm getting burnt with my human centric lighting above me, but those pathogens, it just disrupts. It's we're not just wiping it clean, like you said. We're not getting rid of grime. What you're doing is you're preventing them from reproducing. You're not saying your body is stopping it, right? That's not how UVC is working. You're inactivating the pathogen's ability to reproduce. If it can't reproduce, it can't cause harm. And you do that by basically screwing up the DNA of it, and that's how it
We
works
got
a
to
little
get Fred
differently.
Van Leeuwen in here, buddy. No, I mean we got to get Fred Van Leeuwen back on the show. Greg, you're up.
Um, so, what is the most recent UV project you did install? Explain it.
We're working on a couple projects right now for a hospital. Like I can't really say the name
Yeah,
right
Sure, of
now,
course.
no, that's fine.
but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a couple. It's several fold. So they are looking at the mobile units, right? Which a lot of, like you mentioned, the carts you wheel around.
Mm.
But we had to take a quantifiable approach with it, where we went in, we set them up, and we did the test at a variety of points because this place is based in an area where they have a very high senior population,
Mm.
right? So seniors tend to be more susceptible to those HAIs, right? And it costs hospitals millions of dollars to deal with that. So they were like, we gotta get rid of MRSA in 15 minutes. We want C. diff gone in 2 hours. So we had to kind of look at the space and scale it up based on the square footage and put enough units in there and then place them in the right. So we had to kind of build a book for them, right?
Mm.
Something that is, I don't want to call it idiot proof, but something that can be sort of implemented as part of the janitorial process.
Mm.
The units go here, they go on for this long, you move them to the next room. The room has been cleared for a MRSA patient. The room has been cleared after a C. diff patient. So you have to, it's not just you wheel it in, pop it on. No, we're trying to attack specific things. Um, so right now we're working on that project. That is a potentially be a pretty big one. We're also working with, a healthcare
Uh,
equipment provider.
yeah,
Go
real
ahead.
quick before you move on, this hospital one sounds complex, and it sounds like you haven't sold anything yet. Are you getting paid for all this work?
Oh no, we have. We've sold.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we've
It's
sold plenty of units.
units.
Yes, but now we're trying
Perfect.
to implement it so that they do it across, a couple hundred
Got it.
hospitals. Put it that way.
Ooh.
Okay.
So we have sold it. Yeah. Um, Another one that we are working on, have not sold to be specific yet, but we are working on, which is pretty cool, is for a medical equipment uh, distributor where they have to disinfect things
I think
along
that's the
their,
best application.
but it's still surface based, right?
Yes, yeah, I
Because
think
it's
that's the
now
best application for it. Yes, I agree with you.
they have to clean
Before it gets
equipment.
packaged or whatever.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
since they're in the medical
Totally agree.
equipment field, it circles back to the medical world. That is a selling point for them. So it always
Sure.
comes down to the dollars. Like we're not,
Yep.
again, we're not in the hygiene therapy aspect because it needs to make sense. Either the customer offers it as a value add, or it's actually preventing the cost of something. Right. We still have to make the dollars still have to make sense. So they want, but it's we can't bottleneck it. Right. We can't implement UV and cause a bottleneck in their assembly line or in their whatever production line. So you have X amount of time. These things are going on the conveyor. We have to construct an apparatus around it and figure out what makes the most sense within the space that we have. So it's a tricky engineering problem that luckily I don't have to deal with directly. We leave that to the engineers on the manufacturing side. But that's some cool stuff, and I think you'll see that in the space of like large distribution centers. Things are getting on the customer because that bacteria, again, not viruses really, that bacteria can survive a trip in a truck, right? It can go from one place to another. Somebody has
Who
a
knows? I
norovirus
mean, at the
outbreak.
end of the day, someone that's cranking out these supplies and packaging them up as sanitized or disinfected or whatever their logo is,
Yeah,
you're adding to that, and for them, that's just another value add to their customer, right? And
yeah, agreed.
and if it works, it works. You know, how about airports, man? I've always felt like airport washrooms in these places where, where many people are going into. I don't think anyone would have a problem with like a mall washroom or an airport washroom. Have you had any success in those kind of property management more applications?
We haven't. Those have been, at least during the height of the pandemic, the more hygiene theater
Yeah,
looking
sure.
aspects, because what you can't do is interfere with the operation, right? Sure, we could put surface disinfection, we could put it mounted permanently in the ceiling and have it on a timer to go off after an absence of occupancy.
Sure.
But then somebody walk back in, you got to shut that off. So that all that exists, but it needs to operate in order to quantifiably eradicate the viruses and eradicate the
Sure.
pathogens. So in those spaces, you're talking about the air disinfection, right? And if you're building new and you can design the HVAC structure to circulate the air and pack enough, UVC disinfection, whether it's, whether it's mercury vapor, pulsing on, whatever it is, LED, LED is not quite there yet. Then sure, that is great because you can design the air to circulate effectively around it. That's the way operating rooms
One
are
of the
built.
things about the disinfection thing that makes, as we've all been in the LED game for so long,
Hmm.
the LED makes me nervous because you can't change a bulb. Like when you put that F15 T8, whatever 350 nanometer mercury tube in there, it's new. If the ballast is working, it's doing the disinfection. And they know from water treatment and like there's years of experience. The LED makes me look that, which is where Puro's got that xenon pulse. Again,
Yeah.
you got a replacement lamp, right?
Hmm.
And you have this like, okay, with the LED, with the lumen maintenance and the dirt and whatever, I feel like we're blind to how long this technology might actually work for. So
Well,
I'm
but
nervous about that. But I was one more thing I want
you're
to ask you about. So you got 1 minute on the answer that
all right.
question.
Okay. Sure. So you're looking at disinfection from a general illumination standpoint,
Yeah.
right? No, they're not going to last as long. And you're thinking of like, oh, the maintenance, the operation. The reality is, mercury vapor is not lasting very long. None of this stuff's lasting very long. So
Yeah, but
what's the counterbalance
we
between?
know because the bulb's burned out.
Yes. Well, and again, LEDs, like there's still a ways to go, but can you still make the quantifiable monetary argument that the energy consumption will be so much less and you still get the disinfection that it's worth it? But you're right, it still does need to be like changeable. You need to be able to maintain it, service it. So I agree. Those are questions that need to be kind of ironed out a little bit better.
Darkness. What are you doing with darkness, man? Dark skies.
Dark sky?
Are you struggling
We
like the rest of us? Have you done any projects with darkness and dark sky related projects? Low Kelvin temperature, shielded cutoff, all that kind of stuff. Turtles.
turtles, yeah. So we were heavy into street lighting. We did thousands and thousands of street lighting back in 2014, 2015. Did a lot, with Cree, with Philips, a couple other manufacturers. It became such a race to the bottom
Mm.
that we made more money on a $200,000 shopping center on our streetlight project. It's just something that we have sort of, to a certain degree, phased ourselves out.
Mm.
We'll do some decorative things, but if you're doing decorative, it's not really dark sky. So no, sure, we have products available. We have a customer, we haven't sold anything yet, but they were looking out and like they're near an observatory. So dark sky is extremely
We need guys like you and
strict.
guys like me and Greg to get on board with this and try to figure out a way because it's so tough to sell. It really is. Like
It
we had a
is.
project the other day and I went in, I spoke like I didn't want to lose the deal on it, right? Because you're talking about a big 3PL logistics warehouse. You're talking about,
Okay.
Greg, 35, I don't know if it was 35 or 36 outdoor lights and wall packs and all this sort of stuff, right? And I went in and I gave the pitch, and I'm the host of the co-host of the Starving for Darkness podcast. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I went in and I just said, look, we could do cutoffs. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like,
Yeah.
so I have less light and it's not white? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm pitching here. And he's like, no, dude, we're going to go with the original proposal, which is
You just
light
end up,
everywhere.
yeah, you end up dealing with the individual municipalities a lot,
Yeah.
and they're just copying and pasting something from somewhere,
Yeah.
and
The
sometimes
reason
they'll
why
just
they
be
don't
out.
want to enforce their model lighting ordinances is because the municipalities are the biggest offenders of the lighting ordinances.
Well, if you're going down a street light or a decorative street lighting
Yeah.
project, you got two different Cobra heads are one color, decorative's another color.
No, but I mean, their own
Um,
buildings and their own streetlights are violating all their light trespass laws. So,
Yeah, but I mean, and sometimes they just get the ridiculous in the requirements and the foot candles at the edge. So it's sort of related to dark sky. It's light trespass, sky glow kind of thing. But it's still we're talking about control of light, preventing it from going where it shouldn't go, right? So municipalities can be tough to navigate around that, and sometimes the projects end up getting more expensive than they need to be because of very minor issues, at property lines or at the horizontal. So you need to add poles, right, along the perimeter, put the backlight shields. So you need to add more, and I don't know where that compromise is, right? I don't know where it makes the most sense, but I know adding 25% of the cost for way less percentage, decrease in
so the light doesn't go as far, and it's not
Yeah.
as white colored. What are you talking about,
Yeah.
bud? That's what I'm paying for. It's really tough, man. It's so
Yeah.
tough for us. Hey, Justin, man, you're a badass. I really appreciate you and for coming on the show. And I know there's going to be some comments saying, like Colligan, shut up or whatever. But hey, man, I really had a good time chatting with you, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate being on. I'll be listening in the future, and you guys are doing a great work here, man. It's great to see.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Hey, and if you made it this far with us, I know I speak on behalf of Justin and Greg and everybody else that you got to go to satco.com, satco.com. They do the light thing. They do the right thing, Greg Eric.
Threw me off with that one. I thought you were missing Satco, but yes, do go to Satco. Traditional lighting, LED lighting, decorative fixtures, components, everything lighting related, Satco has.
Yeah, man, they're the best. And of course, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. And this time, I mean it, folks. If you made it this far with us, I speak on behalf of Justin and Greg and everyone at Nailed. Hey, we really appreciate you, all you lighting peeps out there. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.